Awesome. So my goal here is to take what has been talked about as much as possible and wrap it up into a concluding talk. So my thought here is that what has been talked about really all boils or gets wrapped up into the future going forward, where and how we as a security industry need to think about being in 5 to 10 years. And so just it's based on a lot of research, a white paper I did, just some thinking I've been doing over the last 3 to 4 years, just about the industry, about SOCs and everything else. And so all of that kind of wraps up into really my first slide, which I am missing a slide. So really before this, there's a slide that says the SOC is dead. Now, spoiler alert, it's not dead. Long live the SOC in, as much robust, monarchy terms as we can talk about. Really, because the SOC isn't dead, but it is absolutely evolving. And so, first of all, who am I? Justin talked a little bit about, we go back a ways, but I've been in security. My name is Craig Bowser. I've been in security for over 20 years. I started out with the military, moved into government contracting, and then recently I moved into a commercial government contracting space. And in that time, I've done security analyst, security manager, security engineering, SOC manager, SOC security, and now I'm in a security architect role. And so I've seen things change over time. I've seen where things have gone, have been, and many of you who are long in tooth are also, very much aware of the changes that we have had. And you think back, early 2000s when I was first getting into security, the first tools that we really were using were simply, AV, antivirus, firewalls, and IDS. That's what we were monitoring or watching that. So maybe we're doing syslog with all of the devices and servers across our network, and just have some grep and some regex that we were using to kind of pull out important events. But then our tools started to grow. We have SIM started to show up, VPNs, we had network monitoring tools, not NDRs, that's a little misplaced. But we had the ability to watch the network. We're starting to evolve into IPS, some prevention, automatic blocking services. UBA was just starting to come out in the latter half of that decade. And then we started into more advanced tools with threat intel. Cloud started to really proliferate. EDR and SASE, and as cloud was starting to grow, SOAR. So I remember, some of these tools. I remember going to HP Protect in 2015. I was giving a talk, and I remember walking around the vendor floor, and it's a really big vendor floor, as you imagine, from HP at the time, which was a pretty large company with a lot of services, and the 90% of the vendors on the floor in that year were either threat intel or UBA. And just that was it. There was just 20 to 30 different vendors in each of those spaces, and it was just like, holy cow. And because we thought, hey, we'll add some threat intel, we'll do some UBA, and security will be solved, and we're done, right? Oh no, well, that's why we're here today. We're not done. And then I remember when SOAR was announced, a few years ago, and I started seeing these SOAR tools, and I thought, this is it. This is it. This is the silver bullet. We are so gonna just automate everything. It's gonna be awesome. And yeah, not so much. So now here we are in the 2020s. We're having more microservices are, continuing to proliferate. XDR, whatever that is. ASM, I threw that in because I was like, what is it? It's a new tool, this new application, ASM. So it's like we have all these tools, and at the same time we had this tool growth. We moved from on-prem to mobile, to remote, to cloud, to mobile, and now we're pulling in all of our OT. So we have this evolution of what we're monitoring, the environment we're trying to protect, the environment we're defending as continue to expand. And then at the same time, our SOCs, at one point, most of us were in a SOC that was, in some room in the basement of some, the corner of some basement, or maybe we actually had, a nice, layout of a room with screens and tiers of floors and that type of operation center. But whatever it was, a lot of us worked in this communal location where we could interact with each other and talk across the desks. And then suddenly, so gradually more and more of these SOCs were sort of moved to this kind of environment, and that accelerated with the hit of COVID a couple of years ago. And so there's nothing inherently bad about this or any of this, but what the point I'm trying to make is that our environment that we're protecting, the environment that we operate in, the tools that we have at our disposal have continued to grow and change over time. Yet the problem is we are still stuck in this basic architecture. We are still essentially collecting data, sending it to a central location, usually a SIM. We have a tiered structure of analysts that are watching that, taking action, doing IR. We might, or not, I shouldn't say we might, but there's a small percentage of us that are using threat intel. There's a small percentage of us that are using SOAR. And now many of you here, and hopefully those of you online, have EDRs or some kind of endpoint protection that's more than just AV, but yet this is where we are. And what I'm here to say is this is no longer going to work if it's barely working now. Now, you guys are doing security and many of you doing it well, but we just talked about everything that's happened, and this setup is not going to be able to keep up. This causes challenges to your SOC, to your team, and to your tool set. What are those challenges? Well, first, we've talked about this, it's the lack of personnel. This has been ongoing for many years. It's not a surprise, but I put it here because it's Captain Obvious. Now, one thing that we also have to consider, besides all the challenges of getting people into technology, is the fact that we are competing against other personnel-starved industries. My wife's a teacher. Many of you may have seen recent news stories, showing up on ABC and CNN about the lack of teachers that we have, right? But there are other industries besides that, nurses, and I could go on and on, my welding and other blue-collar jobs. So we're facing competition besides the challenge of getting people into IT that is driving that area. We are managing an increasingly complex security stack. Okay, we just talked about all the tools we added. By the way, we really haven't gotten rid of any. So that means, what did someone say a couple days, yesterday? Someone said that we have an average, or the organizations have like 50 to 60 tools that they're managing. That's a lot of tools to make sure that are working correctly. How many of them are optimally tuned and configured for your environment today? And how many of those will still be that way in 6 months because things change? We have a limited visibility into an increasing attack surface. Our attack surface, as it expands over time and space, over location, and we have a less and less visibility into it because we can't or have not been able to collect and analyze all of the data that we need to about that surface, about the things going on inside that surface. That configuration, that architecture, that is not built to operate at scale, to handle better attacks at higher volumes. More data, more attacks, more often cannot, that architecture can't handle it. much less the personnel that we are managing that architecture. And we're still fighting this fight, compliance versus security versus effective security versus operations. That's still an issue that we're still fighting. So, excuse me. And this is addition to things like supply chain attacks and just the challenge of managing all that data. So how did we get here? I think it's important to talk about how did these challenges come about? And so the first is the shift to DevOps and cloud by operations. This, several people have talked about this already, that moving to this fast-paced CI/CD environment, great for operations, but how hard is it for us as security to know that the configuration that we know now is secure, that is monitored, is going to be in that same state in an hour when they roll out the next update, much less tomorrow after they've rolled out 5 more updates. So that shift has put a strain on our ability to know what's going on. Now, some of us are, absolutely well integrated into that DevOps, and where it's more DevSecOps or however you want to call it. And that's awesome. And I think that shows a maturity in their capability. But many of us are lagging behind, trying to keep up and rapidly falling behind. We've also moved to this mobile, remote, anytime, anywhere access. So remember when you could set an alert for any activity that happened between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and go, hey, something bad's going on because no one's supposed to be in the office? Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore, does it? Or maybe you set an alert for a GeoIP from, that says, hey, anything outside of Texas, send me an alert because that's where all our employees are. Yeah, no, not anymore, right? I'm coming from Belize, I'm coming from London, I'm coming from Hawaii, right? Wherever I happen to log in with my laptop and my wife who's an influencer, right? So maybe it's a husband that's the influencer, or maybe it's your kid that's the influencer, because that's a whole nother subject. Let's not go down that road. Hey, but I do have some good news. Security got better. How many people here have gone into the CISO and said, boss, I'd like to brief you on the slammer attack we just stopped? Today, not 10 years ago, Carson. Right. So, but outside of that, who remembers, dealing with Slammer and the red alert virus? Thank God someone else besides, a couple of, because like otherwise I'd have felt super old. Okay. But it's, security's better, right? That doesn't show up on your radar. It's not even reported, right? 20 years ago, like that took us down for days. Okay. Now we're dealing with Log4j, with SolarWinds, because guess what? Security got better, but so did attackers. That's the bad news. And so we're dealing with that much more complex attacks, much more, imaginative attacks than we were. Security tools and methodologies have got better. We can find this stuff, maybe not as fast as we would have liked to, but we're able to find this stuff and we're able to defend against it. But that goes back to what I was saying, that the complexity and increased number of tools have put additional strain on our ability to defend and monitor and administrate and manage. So what's the answer? What's the solution? Spoiler alert, it's in the title. We become next gen. That's awesome. Just transform to next gen. Let me go flip the switch. Wait a minute. What does that even mean? I had a great GIF in here with Jack Skeleton from Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, but this had to go through corporate, so the GIF got killed. So anyway, so what is a next gen SOC? So let me set some baselines here. First of all, when I talk about a next-gen SOC, I'm not talking about something you're going to do and be ready in tomorrow or next year or even in 5 years, okay? This is a roadmap for, I should say 5 to 10 years from now. What I want to do is kind of lay out a vision of where we need to be as an industry in doing security in time. All of this didn't happen. All of those challenges and how we got there didn't just happen in 2 to 3 years. They happened over 10, 15 years. So unfortunately, yes, in 5, 10 years, we'll be facing other challenges, but hopefully this roadmap gives us the way to get to a point we are able to handle those new things as they come along. Secondly, as to echo something Carson said yesterday, these are concepts that can be applied and capabilities that can be accomplished regardless of your size. I'm not here to say everyone has to have a 20-person, 50-person SOC. I'm here to say your SOC should be able to do these things, or at least know which of these things you need to do and then do them well. Again, to echo what people have previously said this weekend. So having said that, a next-gen SOC, first of all, should be able to handle routine attacks and alerts automatically. Routine things shouldn't be touched, shouldn't be seen by an analyst. They should be done at the end of the day. I have a report, this many things were taken care of. Alerts should be enriched and triaged. Things that do come through that aren't totally handled by automation should show up in front of the analyst, so enriched and mostly triaged that they should spend minimal amount of time. My thought, my dream is that it shows up, the analyst spends 5 seconds looking at it, 15 seconds and goes, oh, I need to do this, click, done. You're trying to reduce the analyst activity, the analyst interaction with these things by 50 to 75%. Detections and automated responses are constantly being built and tuned. So I got to unpack this a little bit. There have been a couple people who have talked about detection engineering, and they have their own definitions, and they're wrong, and that's fine. But seriously, what I think is that detection engineering is the capability of a team or an individual to build and manage detections, alert and responses, machine learning algorithms on a continual basis in a CI/CD DevOps manner. So what I'm saying is that this group continually works to build these things, tune these things, and even retire these things at the appropriate time on a consistent basis all day. So that alert that showed up in the morning that kicked off maybe 2% false positives by the end, or maybe I should say 20% false positives, is patched 3 times or 2 times that day. And at the end of the day, maybe it's down to 8% false positive. So this is what I mean by detections and automated responses are constantly built and tuned. Logs and events are ingested from a variety of sources. We are no longer constrained by trying to figure out what we're going to ingest. We just hoover it all in. Now, I have some caveats I'll get back to on that, but we are hoovering things in. We are, or I think one of the memes, GIFs I try to sometimes use is the Kirby sucking up everything. That's for the younger generation. So Kirbying just basically everything. So we are pulling it all because we are analyzing as much of it as possible. And we're doing that because we're utilizing machine learning and AI and threat intel alongside of atomic alerts, behavioral alerts, and statistical alerts to monitor, alert, and respond to activity within our network. So these are the capabilities that we need to migrate toward in a next-gen SOC. So how do we get there? We do it in phases, or at least I break it up into phases, and I'm going to sit here and say that if, and just as a precursor, I just grouped a bunch of these things in as much as I could in a way that I tried to make logical sense of the tasks that should be accomplished to get to those capabilities. And I tried to put it into phases. And if you see some of these things and you're like, well, we already did that, or we're not going to do that for years, that's fine. It's not like, this is a hard and fast rule. But I did it this way just so we could grasp it organizationally in our head. And so, first of all, one of the things you absolutely need to be doing is you need to increase your automation and your integration. You're not going to be able to keep up, and you already know this, with all the things that have to be done, all the responses, all the logs and analytics, if you don't automate. So absolutely, if you aren't doing this, start doing this. If you are already doing this, continue to make efforts to do this as much as possible. Integration is key. The Cisco Security Outcomes Survey showed that one of the top 3 things that improve the ability of a SOC, of a security team, to be effective is tool integration. The more your tools can integrate and talk to each other, the better off you're going to be automating and also operating. So, for example, I'm with a client right now. They were using one tool to send events to their SIM. And their SIM takes events in a certain format. And I've configured this tool and reconfigured this tool and reconfigured this tool to output events in that format, yet their SIM won't accept it. And I have eyeballed it, and I have studied it, and I have beat my head, and I do not understand why it won't accept it, despite the fact that everything I looked at says that it is the right format. I spent 15 to 20 hours on this. This should have taken me 30 minutes. That's 15 to 20 hours that I have billed the client that I am not doing things to improve their security. Tools need to be easily integrated. More on that later. Ingest threat intelligence, ingest relevant threat intelligence. I like what Carson put yesterday about this. Another story, another client. I'm working on use cases with their threat intel. While I'm doing that, this client, who is a large American pharmaceutical company. Now, they are also international. So they're a large American-based international pharmaceutical company. And I noticed when I was working with their threat intel feeds that they had a feed about DDoS attacks to Australian public schools. And I said to them, why are you using this feed? It has nothing to do with you. And they said, well, that's just in case. In case what? You become an Australian public school? I don't know. Okay. Oh, you signed my paycheck. Okay, it's in there. This is where I get a little bit of pushback. Plan your migration to cloud-based SOC tools. You're not going to be able to do what you need to do on your on-prem SOC tools. Guess what? Your SIM vendor's already going there. Some of you may be already there. That's good. But if you're not, you need to plan how you're going to get there. Because your on-prem SIM tools, you already limited yourself to what you ingest because you don't have the storage and you don't have the capability to ingest it because you're limited by license. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to move to the cloud and like, oh, yeah, I can afford everything now. Yeah, that ain't happening. But you're gonna be able to afford more. This is going to shift. Splunk just announced that they are now able to search S3 buckets from Splunk. That's a kind of a little bit of a game changer, right? More and more tools, more and more online SIMs will have that capability, whether they're searching from S3, from a Azure blob, from whatever, but they're going to have cheap storage that you can search. Can't do that on-prem. You got to move to the cloud. You're not going to be able to do the analytics and the ML and have the compute on-prem to do what you need to do. Start planning this move to the cloud if you're not there already. Refine and create metrics to drive your planning and prioritize your tasks. You're going to need this when you go to management and say, I need to move to the cloud. I need to do this. And you're going to have to show them why. So all those metrics books that showed up, you know, and all the talks about metrics, this is why. You're going to need to demonstrate that you're tracking what's going on and why you want to do X over Y over Z. Metrics is going to help you do that, but well-planned, well-thought-out metrics. So start thinking about that. Start conducting asset inventory and management and manage that, right? And it's not just, and when I say assets, right, let's, you know, we're not in the, you know, the 2010 definition of assets anymore. We're into where's your data, where are your users, where is your microservices, who's spinning up what, all of those are your assets. Remember, go back to the basic definition of an asset. It's anything that benefits you. So if you have data, that's your asset, right? We get sometimes a little too, especially those of us who are long in tooth, we think of asset as that box. Right? We got to get out of that thinking. I got to get out of that thinking. So there's not much here in the architecture diagram that's changed, but there is a bit that changed here. So the first thing, I talk about this log router in the top corner here. Sorry to the streamers. It says logs are filtered, routed, copied, enhanced. It's a log router. I call it a log router. I don't know if the industry calls it a log router. I don't know if they come, you know, Gartner hasn't named it yet. But this is a tool of which there are several, Cribble, Logstash, FluentD, Fluent Bit, I think is one of the other ones, where you basically are taking, you know, especially because you're moving to the cloud. So you're take this opportunity to put something in between your collection and your storage / data analytic device and start figuring out what you're doing with that data. Right? Do you need to send all that data to your high price data analytic box? Spoiler alert, no. So start figuring out what you need to send to data storage, your data lake, what you need to send to your analytic device, and what you can drop. Right? You don't need all of that. You need things that are going to help you with your compliance, with your security, with your ML that you're analyzing. All right. You know, what else? Maybe some other things that I can't think of off the top of my head, but anything else, you're like, get rid of that thing. All right. That's how you start managing some of your prices there. Figure out what you're going to send where. Begin your migration to cloud-based SOC tools. Start moving that stuff. This log router will help you do it because you can use that to say, I'm going to, you know, where you can dual send to my legacy stuff, also send to my new stuff. Begin using ML to analyze your large log sets. Start figuring out what algorithms. Hopefully that word sticks in my head. I've been having a hard time remembering that word. You know, start using your algorithms, whether it's what comes with it, this, you know, things that are, you know, supplied by the vendor or basic ones, or start, you know, maybe you've actually got to the point, maybe you're actually at the maturity point where you're hiring a data scientist to do this. But start using it to analyze use cases that you're looking at. Begin using UBA, RBA. I made a lot of fun, but I mean me. Of UBA when it was, you know, and how ineffective and it sucked. Guess what? It's gotten better. Technology tends to do that. RBA is great. Risk-based analysis. You know, the ability to stack up little things until it reaches a certain score, and then you give an alert. This is somewhat like convicting somebody based on circumstantial evidence. Hey, these are all weird things that happened and I didn't care until you did enough weird things and now you're guilty. Start using that. We have had, where we've implemented this, we've reduced alerts by 30 to 40% and increased alert fidelity significantly. Increase activity monitoring, start taking in more data, start pulling in data from, anywhere you can think, from physical devices, cloud devices, applications, OT. Start building that out. Why? Because you're now able to filter and route that stuff. Use metrics to evaluate the effectiveness of your tools and processes. Use those metrics to absolutely figure out what goes where, why, what can be dropped. What tools do you not need anymore because you're not using them, or they're duplicative. Start doing threat hunting. That's not called out, but it's in the diagram. You have a security engineer that's starting to create this CI/CD process of alerts, detections, and playbooks. Finally, phase 3, you've migrated to the cloud. You're all in, baby, right? You're enriching, you have stuff coming from threat intel that's helping, right? One thing you've done, you've switched your structure. You're no longer tiered. You are in teams. You're in teams where your team has all the components that you need to do monitoring, detection, response, threat hunting. And those teams work and support each other, internal to the team and between teams when needed. It allows for a lot more flexibility and comprehensive operational capability in that structure. You can still bring in junior people, but they end up with the support and build up to with the senior people inside that team. Some of you are in tiers, but you're really kind of in teams. And that's fine, but move to this. You also have that security engineer doing that overall CI/CD process. You've completed your migration. You've developed a detections, engineering, DevSecOps. I have no idea what to call it, so I'm making up names for that process. Partner with an MSSP or MDR, cover gaps. Said not everybody needs to do this. It doesn't all need to be in-house. And maybe some of this isn't necessarily where you have 24/7 monitoring, but maybe you say, I need help. I don't have threat hunting. I don't need to do it all the time. So maybe I contract that once a month. And they come in to do a hunt. We've got a couple contracts where we hunt once a month. We come in, we propose a use case, we do it for a week, we give them a report. It's a great way to sell IR too, but that's beside the point. But the point is that you have that capability to get extra help where needed, whatever it is. Maybe it's building rules, maybe it's maintaining your rules, but don't be afraid to do that. Most importantly, and this can be done in any part of the phases, you have to develop a program to fund and implement comprehensive training program, because the SOC skills that we have now and the SOC knowledge that we have now, that's going to be different in 5 years, in 2 years. So how do we keep our personnel up to date? Develop that training program, and that training program needs to be both internal and external. I don't remember who talked about this yesterday, but I know Fleet has talked about it a little bit today. But it's giving people the opportunity to self-educate and providing the structure for OJT and in-house and external training. So start laying the groundwork for that. So how do we get there? What are some strategies? Well, increase the use of managed services to cover gaps, whether that's temporary or long-term. Temporary because you're going to build it in-house and you just need to kind of get there, or long-term because you're not going to be able to, you're not going to do it. Simplify the number of tools that you are used whenever possible. And those tools that you have should have good integration. Absolutely. The more that those tools integrate, again, I foot stomp on this because it's so important and I'm so frustrated with the current contract I'm on, but the better it is, the more you are going to get out of those tools. Hire or develop programming, DevOps, and data analytics skills. Now, I'm not saying hire programmers, DevOps people, or data analytics people. I'm saying train your people to have these skills as an, sort of a round out of their own current capabilities. Because you notice a lot of what the NextGen SOC needs relies on these skills. So help your people and plan for them to have that capability. Formalize your SecOps process. You cannot automate if you haven't formalized the process. When we go in and do SOAR implementations, we first say, what is your SOPs? And if they don't have them, we help them develop them so we know what to automate. And so formalize your processes so you can automate your stuff and then improve on your automation. And then constantly re-engineer, or I should say continually, on a regular basis to leverage new tools and new capabilities. That's, it's kind of like obvious. We kind of know that in our heads, but just formalize that thought process, that planning, so that, in a year when, new tool comes out, like ASM, okay, well, ASM tools, they're just being announced. Okay, well, where does that plan? How does that fit into our strategy? When should we acquire these? Should we acquire these? Can we do it with our current capabilities? So this is part of that. Oh, okay, let's think about this. Let's think further. So in conclusion, no two SOCs look the same now, and no two will look the same at the end of this process. I'm not here to give you a cookie cutter mold to fit yourself into. I'm here to give you some capabilities to obtain and to achieve, or at least present those to you. So implement and continue automation efforts, consume tailored threat intel, shift your operations to the cloud, increase the telemetry you are ingesting, develop ML and AI and data analytic capabilities, plan for CI/CD detection engineering, start figuring out how that's going to work in your environment, and use short and long-term planning. And what I mean by that is that everything I have presented today could go right out the window in 3 years. It's fine. You started a plan, sit down, generate another plan, right? Of nothing else in the industry, we know we're going to have to adapt to the change of how how threats evolve and change over time. We just need to be better at being able to pivot. And so part of that is having these long-term plans and pivoting to meet them. So with that, that wraps up my talk. Thank you much for sticking around and paying attention. Thank you for coming to the Blue Team Summit. It's great to actually be in person and see everybody and have a great conversation again.